everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Ashley and this is Crafts with Ash. I am so excited to bring you these Halloween DIYs for just around $2. Most of the supplies came from the Dollar Tree, so it's very cost effective. Alright, let's get started. For this first piece, you're going to need this mirror from the Dollar Tree, and then this pack of metal words. We will be using these words in a later craft as well, so definitely keep those aside. So first what I did was took the mirror out of the packaging and then took the sticker off of the mirror. I will never understand why they put the sticker on the mirror itself, but oh well, they did. So I had to go ahead and scrape it off. Next, by using a makeup sponge and black and white acrylic paint mixed together, I dabbed on the paint to the mirror to kind of give it a cracked, old, antiqued, spooky look. Next, I took the word spooky out of that package of metal words and I gave it 2 coats of white Waverly chalk paint. Then I took that same makeup sponge and I dabbed some black acrylic paint all over the word to kind of give it a distressed look. Next, I hot glued that word down at an angle over that mirror. Finally, by using that same brush that had the white paint on it from when I painted the word, I lightly brushed the edges and the middle of the frame with that brush. And here you go, a spooky mirror. What do you think? This next project is so easy. All you're going to need is a jar with a lid, a pack of these skulls from the Dollar Tree, and some moss. All you're going to do is put some moss at the bottom of the jar, then put a few heads in, put more moss in, and then more heads. So you're just going to go back and forth, moss, heads, moss, heads. Then you're going to go ahead and put the lid back on the jar. Now this next part is optional, but I decided to go ahead and paint the lid of the jar with black acrylic paint. Then I lightly brushed the paint on the edges of the jar too to kind of bring that black up. Now on the parts where it gets kind of heavy, I just took a baby wipe and wiped it down, and then I decided just to kind of lightly brush up in the upwards direction, and that added a really cool touch to this jar. And there we go, a really creepy piece. What do you think? For this next craft, you're going to need a picture frame from the Dollar Tree. I liked this one because of the edges. I thought it was kind of spooky and Halloween looking. This pack of 4-piece skeletons, and then a piece of scrapbooking paper. The first thing I did was take the picture frame out of the packaging and disassemble the frame by taking the back off. Then I took that piece of paper that came out of the frame and used that as my guide and traced it on the scrapbook paper, cut it out, and put it in my frame. Next, I took one of the skeletons out of that pack, and by using my white Waverly chalk paint, I went ahead and painted it white. Then by using a small brush, I took some black acrylic paint and just randomly painted some parts of the skeleton. Next, I took that white chalk paint and lightly brushed the edges of the frame. Finally, I hot glued the skeleton to my frame. And there you have it, a very easy 3D skeleton frame. What do you think? For our fourth craft, you're going to need this sign from the Dollar Tree that has all the potions on it. And then this pack of 5 jack-o'-lanterns that I also got at the Dollar Tree. This is also the craft where we're going to use a word from that pack of metal words that we had at the beginning. So first what I did was take off that 3D pumpkin from the front of the frame, and then I took the staples and the ribbon off of the back. Now where the staples were was a little rough, so I went ahead and sanded it down to smooth it out. Next, I painted the entire sign with black acrylic paint. While my sign was drying, I took 3 of the jack-o'-lanterns from that pack and I painted each of them in pumpkin orange from Apple Barrel from Walmart. Next, by using one of the jack-o'-lanterns that I hadn't painted, I took some regular computer paper and I measured out a piece of paper that would fit behind the jack-o'-lantern that would cover the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and cut it out. After I got my first one measured out, I went ahead and cut 2 more to make a total of 3. Next, I took a yellow highlighter and colored in the eyes and the mouth. Now, because just simply coloring it in didn't get all of the edges, it didn't cover it very well, I just decided to color the top part of the paper in that yellow marker, the bottom part of that paper in that yellow marker, and then the middle in black. That way, no matter how I positioned it, it was going to be completely covered. And in a minute, you're going to see me jump to a yellow permanent marker because my highlighter died. I do really think that it would be best with the yellow highlighter because it gives more of that glowing effect. So if you have that, use that instead. But I think it still turned out really cute. Then I repeated this step on my other two pieces of paper. Then, to give my jack-o'-lanterns a more distressed look and a spooky look, I took that makeup sponge with some black acrylic paint and I just lightly brushed the edges of the pumpkin and then around the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. I did this on all three pumpkins. Then I took that same brush that I had used to paint that big sign and I lightly brushed over the middle part of the jack-o'-lantern. Now for this next part, you can absolutely use an Elmer's glue stick. I just couldn't find mine at this moment, but I just took some Mod Podge and Mod Podged those papers that we colored onto the back of the jack-o'-lanterns. Now, if you're going to use Mod Podge, I highly recommend putting the Mod Podge on the jack-o'-lantern itself instead of putting it directly on the paper because it made my black marker bleed, as you saw on the first pumpkin, and then I went ahead and started applying it to the back of the wood on the second and third pumpkin. Next, I wanted to distress my board. So I took white Waverly chalk paint and a chipping brush and with wild and crazy bristles and I lightly dry brushed the white chalk paint over the board. Then, out of the pack of metal words that we had used in the first craft, I took the word beware and gave it 2 coats of the Waverly chalk paint in white. Then I took my level, placed it in the middle of my board, and took a chalk marker that I got from the Dollar Tree and drew 2 lines on either side of the level, using that as my guide. Next, I took my sanding block and sanded the whole thing down to make sure that all the paint and that chalk marker blended together. Then I took that brush again and lightly brushed over it just to give it a little bit more dimension. Then I took my jack-o'-lanterns and my whirs and I positioned them going down, kind of angled. I angled each a different direction at the bottom part and then put the word beware at the top using my 3D stickers. I hot glued the stickers down onto the word itself and then hot glued that down onto the board. To make it really pop from the board, I added 2 stickers to each side. Then I went ahead and hot glued the jack-o'-lanterns down to the board too. Then I took that makeup sponge and some black acrylic paint and lightly brushed over the word to kind of give it a spooky look. And here you go, a haunted jack-o'-lantern sign. What do you think? For our last craft, you're going to need this little sign from the Dollar Tree. I purposely went with the one with the orange sequins and the orange ribbon. Then you're going to need this pack of ghosts from the Dollar Tree as well, and a piece of scrapbook paper. I get all my scrap paper from Hobby Lobby because it's usually 25 cents each. The first thing I did was peel off the back of the frame and then took the backing out. Then after removing the paper that was in there, I dumped the sequence that was in the frame onto a plate and put it to the side. We are going to use that in just a little bit. Next, I took some nail polish remover, and you have to make sure that it's 100% acetone, and my scraper, and I went ahead and scraped off the word in that frame. Now, I kind of used the acetone to wet it and kind of make it a little loose, and then I used the scraper and it came up with no problem at all. Then I took that piece of paper that I originally took out of that frame and I traced it onto my scrapbook paper and cut it out. Then I took one of the ghosts out of the pack and painted it in the Waverly chalk paint in white. After that dried, I took some black acrylic paint and that makeup sponge again, and I lightly brushed it along the edges of the ghost. Then I took it and lightly brushed the middle of the ghost and went around the eyes and the mouth. Next, I took this orange jute cord, made a little bow, and hot glued it to the top of my ghost, hiding the hole. Now, if you don't have orange jute, you can always use regular colored twine. Then I poured that sequins back into the frame, put my scrapbook paper in the back, put the backing back on it, and then I hot glued the ghost to the front of the frame. Now this part is optional, but I decided to take my letters that I did get from the dollar store and spell out the word boo. Then to dull down the black, I went ahead and took that same brush that I painted the ghost with and lightly brushed over the letters with that white chalk paint. Then to protect my letters, I went ahead and took some Mod Podge and brushed over the words so that way they didn't come up. The really cool thing about this sign is that you could also take off that ribbon and just use it as a shelf sitter. What do you think? How fun and easy were those 5 DIYs? Now each of those cost about $2 each, and I also used supplies that I already had in my stash. I can't really tell you which one my favorite is. I really do love them all. You're going to have to let me know in the comments which one your favorite was. I want to thank you so much for watching my video. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, then jump on Facebook, and please like my Crafts with Ash page. Until next time, I'll craft with you soon. Bye!